Experts continue to warn that academic pressure and the failure to cope with it is one of the leading triggers for suicide amongst the youth. Protecting children from unnecessary stress and teaching them to cope with stress is crucial in dealing with anxiety and depression. The Evolve Online School has shared some advice and tips for parents and teachers on how to shift focus away from academic achievements in order to raise happier children. And its principal, Colin Northmore, joins us now via Skype to chat more about neuroplasticity and the development of neural pathways. Colin, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning. Thank you, and morning to your viewers.
Now, before we get into this conversation, Colin, and for the benefit of our viewers, just explain to us what neuroplasticity is.
Neuroplasticity is a term that's been used to describe the way in which your brain forms its pathways and both creates neural pathways and also culls them and gets rid of ones that you don't need. And the common understanding used to be that that only happened when you were little, when you were an infant. But lately it's become quite clear that there are different things that can trigger neuroplasticity. Stress is one of them. But also there's periods of time, and particularly during adolescence, when children have this opportunity to reform their pathways.
And you say that South African schools do not generally pay attention to the phenomenon of neuroplasticity and its influence on the development and on the development of children and adolescents. Do elaborate more on why you say this.
I would say it's not just South African schools, it's schools in general. So what's happened over the decades is that we've arrived at this model of schooling that says you measure a child's performance, you measure a child's worth by the amount of marks they get in a test. And the entire structure is designed to teach children that there's no second chances, that you get the test. Whatever marks you get on the test defines who you are and what you're capable of. So I write a test, I get 10 out of 20 for that, I'm a 50%er. And that's it. There's no do-over, there's no second chance. And so, and I heard you speaking earlier about, teenage suicide and stress. Yes. And all of that is part of the mindset that says, I have been defined. There is only so much I can do. I'm limited by my brain, by my intelligence, by whatever. And in schools, and particularly in South African schools, we don't teach children, first of all, that failure is actually part of a learning process, and they're at school to fail. And nor do we teach them that it's only the first step, that, what defines you is not that you only got 10 out of 20. What defines you is, can you understand why you only got 10 out of 20? And are you able to redo that test so that you get 15 next time and 18 after that?
All right, let's talk about the importance of how parents and teachers need to shift their excessive focus on the value of marks.
Unfortunately, it's the tail that wags the dog. So for as long as our country uses a very high-stakes exam at the end of matric to determine who gets to go to tertiary education and who doesn't, it's very hard for parents or teachers to do an enormous amount about it. However, you've got a huge opportunity from grade 0 to grade 9, more or less, where you are able to teach children certain things. So one of the things you've got to do as a parent is you've got to sit with your child when they get a low mark, or you've got to sit with your child when they try something and fail, and you've actually got to say to them, okay, that was interesting. What can we do about it? Talk to me about some of the strategies. The very, very famous test is the marshmallow test. It's worth watching, and it's hysterical and worth watching on YouTube if you have the time. But basically what they did is they gave a child a marshmallow, a little one, a marshmallow, and said, I'll be back later with another marshmallow if you manage to resist eating this marshmallow. And the researchers showed that kids who resisted eating the marshmallow were better and more successful in life than the kids who just stuffed it straight into their mouths. But what the researcher who designed that experiment told everyone is that it's not that the kid resisted the marshmallow, it's that the kid had strategies for resisting the marshmallow. So getting children to understand their brain and how their brain grows is one strategy that a school can use. Teaching children that failure is actually part of the journey. Meditation is something that triggers your neuroplasticity, and I don't mean meditation in any kind of linked to a particular spiritual belief, it's perfectly fine for it to be linked to a spiritual belief, but there's nothing stopping anybody from learning how to calm their mind, to take a breath.
You know, Colin, I quite like your use of this marshmallow analogy. And I mean, it leads to my next question: why it's so paramount of paramount importance to raise children with a growth mindset and to teach them how to manage and control their fight or flight stress reaction.
Yeah. I'm glad you referred to the flight or fight, because there is these two brains that children need to learn. And the one brain is that flight, fight, freeze brain, which says, which you don't really have control over at the time that the trigger occurs. And that's where the stress part comes in. So I'm faced with a threat, something happens to me, and I either fly away or I freeze or I fight. But there's the second brain, and that's the reason brain. That's the one that says, okay, let me take a breath, let me rethink where I'm at, and or when I've finished reacting, can I sit down and say, what would I do differently next time? I don't know if you've ever experienced advanced driving, but one of the things they do in an advanced driving test is they put you onto a skid pan and they make you lose control of your car again and again and again until you learn the muscle memory to deal with that problem. It's that muscle memory. It's that when you're faced with an exam or when you're faced with a failure, can I build muscle memory for you to say, okay, but there are things I can do. There's strategies I can adopt here. So once I've gotten over the shock, instead of being dictated to by that shock, I can now start to have agency and do something about the problem that I experience.
Interesting, hey? And you say that parents and teachers can actually help children cope by teaching them mindfulness and breathing exercises, self-regulation, and development of social emotional insight, yeah? Do tell us more about this.
It's one of the most simple techniques that you can use, and it's one of the most effective. So breathing is a good one. So when you're faced with that problem, or a problem where you are experiencing stress or fright, one of the things that is happening is that the chemical balance in your brain is all targeted at dealing with the fright. But what you need to be able to do is to loosen up the thinking centers of your brain, and just that very simple technique of saying, okay, before I do anything, let me just take a couple of breaths. Let me just stand still, deep breaths, just 5-6 deep breaths. It has all kinds of positive effects. So one of the things it does is get more oxygen into your brain. And the other thing that it does is it releases the chemicals that actually allow your brain to start to use its reasoning centers. So that's that breathing, just breathe. And many of the tools that are starting to come and be available on the internet and on iPhone, on cell phones and that sort of thing, are simple reminders to you to just take a moment and breathe. And it's something so simple that every teacher can start their lesson by saying to the kids, let's just still our minds, let's just breathe. Just for 2-3 minutes, let's get ourselves into a state of relaxation. And once you're relaxed, your brain is much more receptive, and the neuroplasticity is enhanced in that situation.
Okay.
Meditation is the same thing.
Okay, great chatting to you, Colin. Thank you so much for sharing such insights with us. All right, that is a principal of Evolve Online School, Colin Northmore, and he's been speaking to us about how shifting focus away from academic achievements can help in raising happier children.